morning, everybody. I'm Whitney Thompson. I'm the Deputy Director for Workforce Education for the Community College Board, and I'm very excited to welcome you to today's webinar on competency-based education, lessons learned from our backward design community that we've been hosting over the last couple of years. I'm very excited to share lessons learned, and we will hear from some faculty who have been in the trenches, engaged in this work over the last couple of years. And just very excited to kind of share what's next for everyone. So today, we're just going to give sort of a background of the initiative, kind of what is CBE, why CBE, and then again, we're going to have a faculty panel and hear from both Mike and Chris from some institutions that participated in our backward design community, share what they've learned, what the pain points were, what kind of epiphanies have happened during this process as well. And I'm very excited to hear from them. And then our EdSystems colleagues, Heather and Ginger, are going to share with us lessons learned and student insights they've been documenting along this journey as well. And then we'll close up for some questions. All right. Next, please. Thank you. So while we're not going to do a full webinar today on what competency-based education is, and I'll refer to it as CBE from this point forward, I do want to just sort of level set quickly when I talk about competency-based education, what do I mean? And I'm referring to the educational approach that focuses on the application of learning rather than that time spent in the classroom. And so there are two models of competency-based education, well, three because there's a hybrid, but direct assessment, which is that students demonstrate achievement of competencies without regard to course or credit hours, and they demonstrate mastery of individual competencies through summative assessments such as exams or portfolios. And then the second is credit hour based. And that is what the institutions involved in this learning journey have been focusing on. That's the majority of competency-based education offered in the United States. There are a handful, or about 10 or 11 direct assessment institutions. So, and the credit-based is that students demonstrate mastery of skills and knowledge at a course or a module level, and then competencies are then translated or packaged back into credit hours. So there's a sort of a translation to that. So why competency-based education? This is a journey that we started several years ago, even pre-COVID. Obviously, competency-based education has been around for a while, but in Illinois, especially in the community college system, there's been some interest, a lot of interest, but no actual movement in this space. And so, as we think about this paradigm shift, and obviously COVID for us was a significant sort of disruption to how we do higher education. So, we felt that it was time to sort of move in this space, and we understood that if we were going to be able to respond better to workforce need and improve learning outcomes and really expand access to adult learners, right? Those with no credentials or some credentials or some college but no actual credentials, how do we re-engage them? And the way in which we do higher education needs to change. And we feel that competency-based education is a conduit to that change. All right. So again, like I said, we weren't going to do a primer on CBE, but I just felt it was important to level set there. So again, back in 2021, we led a group of colleges, about 10 colleges, in a CBE equity collaboratory, which was led by the Competency-Based Education Network and Jobs for the Future. And this was really an exploratory webinar series that we engaged in to really think through the equity focus and how competency-based education could help us meet our equity goals. It did not really prepare us for the development of CBE we had originally thought, but it did sort of pique interest and continuous moving forward in this space. So it was sort of a great foundation to kind of know our why before moving forward. So last year in 2022, we had put out a grant opportunity for colleges to pilot competency-based education. And so we ended up funding 2 colleges, Wren Lake and Parkland College, for $200,000 each to build capacity and build institutional support, engagement, and knowledge as it relates to competency-based education. They were using an equity-guided approach, and they were focusing in on a high demand sector. And so this was really the start of the pilot. We had hoped for a stronger grant community. And so what we ended up doing then, since we only ended up funding 2, is we brought on additional participating cohort members to join Parkland and Wren Lake along the learning journey so that we could build competencies and build that capacity together. And so we had Shawnee, Lincoln Land, Southeastern, Kankakee, and Kaskaskia come along the learning journey. They didn't receive funds, but they participated in all of the virtual and in-person design community meetings. And then we had NIU EdSystems, as well as CBEN and Lewis and Clark Community College, who really helped sort of facilitate and do some coaching and really bring this project together. And you'll hear more about the individual colleges. So I'm not going to like dive through each step in this process, but I did want to lay it out for you so that as you're in, it's laid out in our lessons learned report as well that both Heather and Ginger will talk about. But we started this off with the grant, a site visit, and then we kicked off many meetings coming both in person. We did a lot of in-person meetings as well as virtual, and lots of individual coaching hours. So I just want folks to know that are interested in competency-based education, obviously going through it first through this process. It's going to take a little bit more time, but do understand it's not just a couple of webinars and you're going to be moving and be able to get an application together for HLC and move in this space. It's going to take months of work. You're going to have to do the competency, build the competencies. You're going to have to look at your assessment practices. You're going to have to collaborate with your business and financial aid folks at the college, your IT folks. Obviously, this is a faculty-led journey, but you have to have buy-in from administration. So this timeline is really to show you sort of how we move through the process, but also just showing you the amount of work that it took to get us to this point. All right, next slide, please. Again, just a documentation of the work, the learning journeys, learning about the instructional coaches, support services. And so when we ended our backward design community in May of 2023, which feels like forever ago, it was only a few months ago, we ultimately decided that we needed to dive deeper. They didn't get enough, right? With all these meetings, they wanted more. Glutton for punishment here a little bit, but no, we needed to dive deeper into some of the areas like financial aid and business practices. We just had one of our meetings with CBEN on this, and it's really helping us get through the nitty-gritty and think through and answer some of those. Well, now that I've thought this through and we want to offer competency-based education, what does that mean for our academic calendar? Can we have 2 different academic calendars, right? So a lot of those what if questions that are coming up as the colleges are building are being answered through this deep dive series. So it's been really helpful. All right, so I just wanted to give you some background, and we'll circle back at the end here in terms of next steps and what we have coming in the future. But I wanted to kind of lay that foundation of that this work has been building for a while, and the folks that have been a part of this learning journey. It's been really great to work with them, and they've done a great job collaborating across the colleges and coming up with competencies and sharing what's working for them, what's not. And so we're very excited to hear from both Mike and Chris today.
Yeah, thanks, Whitney. Ginger Reynolds here from Education Systems Center, and want to welcome both Christine Simons, who I think is struggling with a little bit of, hopefully not COVID, but a cold or something. So thanks for taking the time to join us anyway. She is Assistant Professor of Electrical Engineering Technology at Kankakee Community College, and also Michael Miner, welding instructor at Run Lake College, and both of them were really instrumental in the work that has happened so far. So happy to have them. We've got some questions we'd like them to speak to, but we also want to have plenty of time for you to ask your questions. So please feel free to share your thoughts as we go along. You can come off mute, raise your hand, use the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat. So first, maybe Chris and Mikey, could you give us an overview of where you've been and where you're going with CBE? Maybe Chris, you want to go, or Mikey, you just came off. Great. You want to go first and just kind of give us an overview?
Yeah. In fact, first when we started this, it kind of seemed really, I don't know how to put it. I've been hands-on my whole life, and the CBE thing didn't really click. For several meetings, and I just couldn't wrap my head around how this could work. And we've started this for a while back, and then I've gotten some help from another couple of faculty members. And the thing that opened my eye on the CBE was two things. Was a trip that I took to Lewis and Clark College up in Godfrey, and got to watch Travis Jumper's program up there. I thought that is where I kind of based a lot of my thoughts. I got to look at some of his information. That was really helpful. The second thing was the trip to Florida. Going to the different breakouts kind of opened my eyes a whole lot on how people teach a little bit different, and how CBE can be perceived. At first I wasn't anti-CBE, don't take me wrong, but I was just like, how is this really going to work on a hands-on program? So a couple of weeks ago, Jonathan Edwards and I, a guy here at the college, were shooting some videos. He was helping me because I am not a video person. He's in the marketing. He came to me and he said, you know what? He said, here in the last 15 minutes, I've learned more about welding just listening to you talk about it. And that's when I kind of scratched my head. And he's like, no, I'm being serious. He said, I'm not trying to beef you up. He said, these are things that I didn't know that I learned in just the few sessions that we had together. And that's when it kind of really opened up another part of CB. Is I was, under the impression that, students needed to have a good deal of prior knowledge before they jump into a program. I'm just using welding as an example. It's great if you have prior knowledge. However, Jonathan has zero knowledge, our marketing guy, of CBE, and he was taking stuff away, and I'm sitting there going, wow, that was just 10 minutes of somebody, and he's a sharp guy, but he picked up on the things that the students are going to pick up. So that was just a big light bulb that went off in the back of my head. Another thing, I'm just looking at the questions that, I guess we're talking about the questions. So that I got over here, I got the email pulled up here of the questions prior to this week. What did you think about CB? There's a couple I'm going to skip in here that I don't have answers for, but going down to the very last question just for a second is, how's your teaching changed having been through this process? So this last semester, I started kind of guinea pigging this class, my intro class, and thinking, okay, let's just see how much you've retained. You've been here for a couple of weeks. And I would go grab a random student, and we would turn the oxyacetylene tanks on and off. And I started this year doing that, and now I don't have the one student that I've got to kind of keep an eye on. They all have that. All those competencies have been met. which was really, really cool. I was thinking this is good. I just got to build on it. So that was it, one of the coolest things that's happened thus far in this program. Advice that I could give to other faculty that are curious about CBE: don't be scared of it, right off the bat. I mean, I literally was, when I first started, piloting the program, I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be, I can do this. This is going to be fun. And I'm still doing it. And parts of it weren't fun. I have to be completely honest. Parts of it were, just like, I can't believe that I just don't understand. It's not going to work. And then I'd have a really, really good Zoom meeting and I would walk away and I was happy. And then there was lots of these ups and downs. So don't, if you're new to this, don't be scared of it. There's a big community for us to lean on, and that was, very, very helpful through this whole process. So, don't be scared of it. Don't fear that the unknowns there. You're going to have a lot of unknowns. I won't sugarcoat anything. You're going to walk through meetings and you're going to feel like you really got the bull by the horns. And by the time you leave the meeting, you're going to be like, where's the bull we were chasing? I don't remember why we had the meeting. I didn't take anything from it. So you're going to have a lot of ups and downs. I want to be, I want to share as much as I possibly can from what we have picked up. We are, I don't think by far, getting ready to launch this thing next week, but we're gaining ground. The last couple meetings that we've had, we've made some really, really huge strides that I've been proud of. And I think it's starting to come together. I would have not imagined at all this is where I would be thinking CBE, a year ago. So some of the challenging about, and what was helpful about cross college collaboration involved in the process. I think it was Nicollet College we went to, that was up in north of Champaign. That one I think we had the bad weather. Anyhow, I started looking at the way that welding lab was run, and picked up a few things on how they have students turning in stuff. They had some fill out cards. It's something that I'm going to implement with this is the CB can be very, very busy. And you get a student that comes in and does something and you may just say hi, bye, get started. They leave. They were able to leave, a brief description on this layout table where they had put their piece that they did their exercise on. They had put, a description of the exercise it was. They'd signed it. The teacher got to grade it. The one thing that I guess one of the only things that concerns me right now, and it's not for a whole, is being overwhelmed in a class. Having a class of, say 15 to 20 people in a traditional class, then you get 4 or 5 CB students that just drop in. That were supposed to maybe be there yesterday, or they drop in and you're busy. They're coming, they're busy. Those are the kind of unknowns that I don't have answered in my head right now. It's nothing that I don't think we can't get past. It's just going to be something I'm going to have to prepare myself for. Look at what advice.
That's a whole bunch for us to chew on, Mike. So let's.
I didn't know.
No, perfect. That was great. Thank you. Well, I want to actually give anybody a chance of all of that great insight. Does anyone have any questions to follow up, or anything you'd like to ask him to sort of expand on at the moment? We'll come back to. So Dane says, what sort of programs are you building in CBE?
Okay, I just got a chat question here that said, what kind of program are we building? Our program is strictly welding right now. I mean, that I'm in charge of. And then we have some, I believe it would be like an INEL, industrial maintenance, that would be mainly used for General Tire, a local employer that we have. My program is strictly welding.
Yeah, and you see that second question about, are you using your own program?
Yeah. It's kind of a, I want to say a hodgepodge, if you will. I'm using some of our original DVDs from Hobart that have some good information on them, except that they're a little bit archaic. Hold on, what was it? The curriculum that I'm using is a kind of a combination of what we got going on, what we've used, and then some stuff that I've just searched on the internet. I mean, if you YouTube a lot of welding videos, you're going to find you're going to look for the people that have had thousands and thousands of views and have been around for years and years and have good quality cameras, that kind of thing. And a lot of the sites that I use, well, I'll say a lot of them, there's like 4 of them. So I strictly kind of pick and choose from those. I haven't had, I've got a giant studio stuff that I can pick from. And then also our marketing department we've partnered up with that may just go ahead and make some of our own videos. So a student can actually see me as opposed to seeing 4 different people on YouTube videos, which to me, I mean, YouTube is a good thing. I've used it. I don't think there's anybody on this whole chat or meeting right now that hasn't used YouTube for something or other. However, I just didn't feel like I had the RLT stamp on it. And if we can make it, we're going to try to make it. If we can't make it, we can't make it. I mean, there are going to be some certain videos that they're just probably not going to be, easily as made as, hey, I can use this one and still get the same point across. One thing that I figured out with the CBE is don't make it so concentrated that it's not user friendly. And then this comes from a student or from a worker that was a CBE student that is helping me with the marketing, Jonathan Walters. He sits back and corrects me every time we try to do something, and it makes more sense. He's like, you're adding too much fluff to this. You need to just ask the question and get the answer. If they've got the answer, good, we go on. So, back to any advice that I could give other faculty members, don't try to reinvent the wheel with this. In fact, the more I look at it, welding and a lot of other trades, welding has been basically CBE as long as I've been a welder. I just didn't know it. I just didn't know that I had to pass that test to get that job. These students have to pass these classes to get their education. So the CBE thing is so directly related to the welding industry. And that's one thing that I didn't really figure out for a while. I really wish somebody would have said, hey, think of CBE like a welding test. And I think things would have clicked a little bit quicker for me, but that's just kind of my take on that. Does anybody else have any questions?
We've got one more question for you, and then we'll move to Chris. I think one of the questions was, are most of your students already working in a related industry, or what kind of percentages do you think you have?
Most of the students that I have right now are looking to get out into this industry and are also holding jobs. Now, I don't have any CBE students yet, but I've got out of a class of 18 students, I think I've got 6 of them that are working in the industry right now and going to school. So I think that, in the future, some of these students here would have more time to work a couple more days a week and still devote, enough time towards their CBE to still make everything a go. Because, it's the nice thing. I think that students, as long as it's not abused, is they have the flexibility of being able to be flexible on both my end and their end. So I don't have to, if they can show up when they want. I don't want to sell it at that. I want to try. I really am kind of structured as I would like to set, a schedule for my students. However, that may or may not work. That may not work at all if they're changing, if they're on swing shifts. So we're just gonna, the first semesters of everything, I think, are kind of a little touch and go. I totally expect that, but I think we've got a pretty good handle on this to where we can move on. Oh, Mike and Colony's pretty much starting with stick. 1G. Okay, so what I'm going to do to answer that question, I'm going to try to pull up my sandbox here on where I've got where we kind of started. So I didn't see exactly who asked that question, but you're asking me kind of where am I starting the very first thing in CB? And I based it basically just off our intro class. And the first thing we do is we start off with torch safety. So I've got just a kind of a getting started section in our modules. And I did a welcome video just so they knew who I was, which only took, I don't know, Sherry, maybe 20 or 30 takes before I got it right, but we got it right and I'm happy with it. So, and then we went on to just the things that you're going to encounter in the shop. So we kind of wanted to just give them a brief overall view of the program without touching on specifics. So we I did a safety video, personal safety and safety equipment within the lab, did a video on that. We did, of course, a welcome video to the CB program, and then emergency protocols. And then the next one, we kind of just talking about, where can you go with these careers? What options are out there for you after you leave us? So talked a little bit about certification advancement, and these are just kind of little places that we touched on. Then when the class actually starts, I've got a video that is specifically on oxyacetylene turn on and turn off procedures. And that's the first thing that I teach in every intro classes. We have to be proficient with the torches. So I put a video out there. It was a little bit longer than what I liked, but it does cover, it's probably the best video that I've ever found. So hopefully that video doesn't bore them to death. That will be probably the longest video that I'm going to put out there. And they'll watch that video and then they're going to come back and take a test. So, and I will probably run it a little bit like I do my intro class. We'll watch a video. I'll go out. I'll run them through the torches, just get them used to it, tell them the do's and don'ts. Then we come in, we're going to take a test. And then we go over the test after they take it. So I'm trying to get them to feel confident with the torches. And then we would just go straight in after that. The first thing that I'm going to do after we get through the torches, we're going to go to the track torch. Obviously, I will have a competency that needs to be met, hand cut with a track torch or hand cut with a hand torch and use the track torch. Probably put some sizes out there, make them cut it to a specific size. And then we will go into the actual weld part of it. So starting off, obviously, flat pads, 6010s or 6013s. Going to start flat pads, then we're going to go to a horizontal pad, and then we're going to go back to a flat pad with a 7018, and then kind of progress. So to answer that question, I basically took our introductory or intro 1270 class here at Rend Lake and just stretched it out. Took it and made it to where it's going to be user friendly, even if you don't know anything about welding. So we had to kind of all think about all those things that if you get the student that doesn't have any prior knowledge, what do you do then? They're willing to learn but you do need to, you do need to develop some way to accommodate them to make them feel like that, hey, I want this. And I've had several students last couple of years that have been just as green as can be, don't even know, anything about welding, and come in and pick up on it, that sort of thing. So that's how and then the end of that program we ended with just a little bit of basic TIG welding. So pretty much just run it just exactly how you would your intro class. And then I think after we get this intro class, I think once we get our intro class written, for our program, which is what we based it off of, a lot of the stuff is I think the other classes getting written will come easier. As much ground as we've made in the last couple of weeks, me and Jonathan, that looks as if that things will get easier once you get a game plan. And I think everybody's game plan is going to be a little bit different, but I'd be more than welcome to share thoughts or people send me emails, ask me questions, phone calls, or personalized Zoom meetings on questions that may not get asked today.
Thank you so much, Mikey. I just have to make a note that I've also learned way more about welding in this past year than I ever thought I would. And I really appreciate the work that Mikey and Ren Lake has been doing on this project. Before we move on to Chris, I just want to amplify 2 points that Mikey made. One is that career and technical education programs are prime for competency-based education because they are in nature competency-based, right? And so, as you think about competency-based education, it really is a natural approach to teaching and learning, right? We've just repackaged our teaching and learning approaches to fit the very arbitrary sort of higher ed rules and fit them into these 16-week 15-week boxes. And so this is a break from that. This is a very natural approach to teaching and learning. And the other point I want to amplify that Mikey made is that for competency-based education, they're intentionally sequenced. You're learning and building on skills, and they're very intentionally sequenced. When we build programs, we do that, but then it's about scheduling, right? When does it fit in? So you may have courses before courses that you really should have. And so in CBE, that's not the case. It's very intentionally sequenced. And we will share out the competencies built for both welding and industrial technology through this process. So just know that you will get those as well. All right, Ginger, sorry to steal that. I just wanted to point those 2 things out. Thank you.
That's terrific. I was going to point out too, when Mike said, I didn't know that if you'd have told me that CBE was actually just a welding test. Right. So yes, for sure. Chris, we would love to hear a little bit about where you all have been and where you're going now and how this experience has been for you.
So hi, is my mic working? Yes. Okay. My name's Chris Selmans. I'm a professor at KCC, Kankakee Community College, in our electrical engineering tech. So for us, where we've been, so the journey here for the backwards design competency-based, coming in, I didn't know there was a term competency-based. I knew for me, I had kind of already sought out kind of this type of solution of CBE. I looked at some of the obstacles for our students, and I was just like, some of these students are really on a level, and I feel like, I don't want to say they're wasting their time sitting in a classroom listening to me lecture, but more kind of, like they don't need to sit here and listen to all this. They could, get themselves through it. So I had a sense of the need for CBE for our curriculum, and kind of what Mike was saying, it naturally is, I think it speaks to it. So then I was asked to participate in the backwards design program track. And so diving in, we got to look at, oh man, I feel like every time we had a workshop, I came away with just more and more clarity as we went. And I always had questions. And I'm so grateful we had the opportunity to work. We had colleagues from across the state that collaborated. And that was actually one of the things that Mike spoke to. Because first, I will say, our first on-site workshop where we got to tour someone else's lab space, it was so validating to just be like, oh, look, all the same stuff. We're all doing the same programs. Doesn't matter where you are in the state. We're all, we're consistent. And I thought that was really neat. But in terms of the actual CBE design, I can be very particular in my curriculum design in terms of organization and sequencing, which Whitney just talked about. And so to have kind of a guideline for that process, and then really where I benefited the most from this journey was, collaborating with other people. Now I can collaborate with the best of them, I like to think, but you don't know what you don't know. And so having someone ask a question, having us kind of bounce ideas off of each other and kind of see the snowball effect to an idea or a plan or a concept, or for example, Ginger just said we're going to share I think it was Ginger just said we're going to share the competencies that we developed. And it's to see how, each one of us got to play a part in the development of each of those competencies and how it kind of grew on itself. So as it pertains to what we're doing at KCC, thankfully, once I found out about CBE, I came back to campus, found out we already do have a CBE program for our phlebotomy department. So I got to collaborate with her and kind of, learn some tips and tricks from her since she's got her CBE up and running. And Iteration is one of the things that she reinforced, and I think we kind of got to experience that just in the competency design part, or competency development part. um, I will say, and I think Mike kind of spoke to this here, man, can I be wordy, developing some of these modules, and putting together just the page, in we use Canvas in our LMS. So just putting together the page, and directing the student on what to do. It's like, there's a simpler way to say this, and really, that's, if there's anything I took away, no, I took a lot away from CBE, this whole process. But one of the biggest things is, which I'm not demonstrating now, how to be a little more concise, a little more direct, a little more to the point. And that's really carried over into just my regular classroom curriculum. I've taken away, there's so much that I've learned through the journey of the CBE process that I am applying right now in my classroom with my face-to-face traditional learning. I will say, probably the two biggest hurdles for me as we went through all of this was, one, getting my brain to transition from 16-week credit-based, all of every traditional learning that I've only ever done, into this, what Whitney touched on, the sequencing idea, this idea of just cascaded modules. And it now I look back and I'm like, it's not really even hard to see, that. But whatever, there was some kind of weird blockage in my brain that just didn't want to accept that. And then the secondary thing, and I still, to this day, I still get caught up in it. Um, we have competencies, and it's like, I look at, let's say troubleshooting. It's part of everything that our students are doing, that they need to know how to do and demonstrate in the end. But it's like, well, how do I have a troubleshooting module? It's really part of everything, so we're working on, I'm working on ironing out that kind of thinking for me. It's there, it builds itself. And Mike touched on this too. I found that as you start developing your actual curriculum, the module curriculum, it then you kind of have a template, if you will, for how that's going to move forward. And I think, we finished strong in our journey, our CBE journey, where, we were working on learning journey outcomes. And I thought that was great. We all got to, again, collaborate and fill in these more or less templates on, here's the things we want to make sure we cover. And that helps me, again, streamline some of my thinking and my direction. There is, oh, I see. Gotcha. I was like checking chat and making sure I don't miss a question, but I got you, Mike. What was the other thing I wanted to touch on? I think that's mostly it. Recommendations moving forward. I would say trust the process, use your coaches, please reach out to your coaches. And I mean, I still talk to my colleagues that we collaborated with. These are, and I mean, weird things that I've adopted. We had a Zoom meeting for one of our, workshop type or follow-ups. And it was right at the end of the semester, and I'm seeing Lyle taking in books that he had rented out to his students over there, or not rented, but they can check them out like he used to do in high school. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do that. That wasn't even part of the CBE journey. That was just us happening to be on a Zoom call, and I'm like, oh yeah, we're doing that now. So it's just great. So it was really, really cool to, I mean, because I jumped in feet first to this, and yeah, there's a lot of information. I took a lot of really good notes, I think, and participate in the process. It's the best way to get through it.
That's super helpful. That's super helpful, Chris. I think, let's see, we've got a question here. What types of institutional support did you receive to help transition teaching and learning ideas from a more traditional curriculum to a CB approach? I mean, we'll maybe take that one, and then we can, how long is the HLC approval process for CB programs? And that might not be something that you can speak to, but maybe
Right.
we can talk about it a little bit, because we do have some lessons learned that we will get to. And so I will speak to the HLC part, but if you could maybe speak to what types of institutional support were helpful.
Yeah, so for us personally at Kankakee Community College, our institutional support, so like I said, thankfully I had the experience where someone had kind of already paved the way. Some of the things that, as we were going through the CBE journey, it hadn't occurred to me, oh, how does this work for like financial aid? That was definitely something that I was like, oh, I didn't even consider that. And so someone, having someone on campus who'd already kind of paved the way for that helped. So we have um it, my brain's like, oh, give names, that's not important. But so it between our IT services, that's been helpful, and we have our own specifically Canvas person. That's all they do all day is Canvas. And so they've been really helpful for us. But I will say, using some outside resources, like I think it's helpful for us to reach to our industry partners, and like if they're using, I don't know, whatever training program, will they let us in on that? Is that something we could incorporate? And so some things like that. But in terms of actual like rollout curriculum design, it's been just me doing the typing in the Canvas, and popping the links. And like I said, this is where it's been most helpful to have I keep calling them LJOs, learning journey outcomes, that we've been planning, we worked on as a collaborative team. That's where it's been helpful, because most of the, at least, sequencing and nitty gritty is in there. It's just me putting words to it, which again, I could be more concise with, but definitely.
No, perfect. Thanks. And speaking of all of that documentation, the learning journey outlines and all of that stuff is going to be a part of a document that EdSystems will be releasing in conjunction with ICCB, hopefully soon. I think we've got a couple of people to make sure everything's all fine with, and cross some T's and dot some I's, but hopefully that will come out very, very shortly. So Heather, if we want to move on, I think to our we can give you a little bit of a highlight of the lessons learned document that's coming. And I think my colleague Heather is going to hit some of the main pieces here. Oh, I forgot to answer the HLC approval process question. And Whitney, you can chime in if you want, but my understanding, I think, from Travis and Lewis and Clark, that it really wasn't a particularly cumbersome process for him. Do you have any other since it's also new, do you have any other insights?
Yeah, I can't remember, what Lewis and Clark and Parkland said on the timeline. I mean, HLC does have a significant sort of form and, substantive change form, and then other things that you have to document for CBE. But it's very clear though, and it's available, and you can look at that. I'm trying to find the link so I can pop it in, but it really just depends on how well you answer the questions and if you have to go back and forth with them. So,
yeah, thanks. It didn't take 6 months. No, it might be 5 to 6 months. We can double back with Lewis and Clark and Parkland and find out a little bit more if that's helpful. I think they're also getting more streamlined as they do it more, and things are becoming more and more clear. So we can definitely follow up on that. Heather, do you want to give us our overview?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Heather Pensack here from EdSystems. And just thank you again, Mikey and Chris, for sharing all of that. It's been, to your point, Whitney, it feels like it was like yesterday, but also like 2 years ago. But it really was so much work, and just thankful for you all and all the hard work you put into this and continue to do to really have these intentional programs. Ginger and I are part of the innovation team here at EdSystems. This is very much like an exciting, innovative space. So I know we're at like 10:43. We've got lots of things that are on here. This presentation will be shared out, so I'm not going to kind of go over all the content that's on all the slides, but it is there for you to review and take a look at. And as Ginger shared too, we'll have that larger document out to you all with all of the resources as soon as possible. But as you know, there's always kind of multiple iterations of review on things before you make them public. So, but we really did, we're very much a part of this process, working with the design communities, with welding and industrial maintenance. And we're gathering those lessons learned throughout. So these really are informed by, focus groups and interviews that we had with college participants throughout the year, and also just gathering things from each of those workshops, right? As people would reflect and talk about things. And so just excited to have that here for you all, and wanted to put a table of contents here so you can see kind of all the different things that are going to be in here. So we do talk a bit about the process and kind of lessons learned throughout that. some overarching pieces, and then really looking into, you've heard about Lewis and Clark here a couple of times, so focusing in on a case study and sharing learnings and insights there, and then talking a bit about what this has looked like for each college as they're moving forward, how you're hearing there's continued collaboration, continued workshops on this, kind of getting into the nitty-gritty, but also what each college is up to in terms of their timeline and some additional resources and products there for you all. So a little teaser of things to come in the full report. But these pieces were kind of spoken to before, again, that equity guided approach, that contract with CBEN, who really led a lot of those in-person and virtual sessions. But I do want to flag here, what you're going to see in the report is, testimony quotes directly from those college faculty and other department participants. So really thinking about that end in mind, designing the competencies, considering what students should be able to do or know upon completion, that we spent a lot of time in that, right? What does that backward design look like? What is that, what they should be able to do or know? And as Chris and Mikey both shared, like getting to that language across colleges and collaborating on that was, a challenge, but it was kind of a beautiful challenge and really great conversation to get to those pieces. You've seen the participating community colleges that we have for industrial maintenance and welding. And again, here are some of those design processes, right? So you've heard too, that transition from credit-based course focus to really that outcome-based learner-focused structure. And just thinking too that, they had a lot of these competencies already in their programs as their learning outcomes, but where they needed to be thoughtful there about breaking it down into smaller segments. And so what you'll see in the document is, again, kind of each of those pieces going through the process. So developing competencies, you'll see here again linked are those actual competencies from industrial maintenance and welding. And really getting, one of the things I wanted to call out here, and even Chris spoke to this, that concise piece, like we had a whole conversation about using the word tool instead of using like a specific type of tool, right? To accommodate different colleges and tools they're using, but also the changing world of these things, right? And so what are those tools? We can be really clear about that in the practice of it, but keeping our competencies maybe a little more open-ended, but also concise at the same time. And also, I think employability skills, that was one that you'll see kind of across those industrial maintenance and welding competencies. They were a little more difficult to put in there, but each group really said that these are the things they need to have in there. Those are the things you're hearing from your industry partners. And also within your own college, right? Those skills are really helpful for students to succeed and advance within the college setting as well as in an employer setting. Looked here too at developing an assessment strategy. So developing that curriculum map where they're introduced, reinforced, and assessed. Kind of building on those current college processes and assessment practices, right? Lewis and Clark, you can see an example here. They have an asynchronous assessment with a bank of 300 options that just kind of randomly pulls 20. So students are needing to reassess. They're getting to different questions each time. So they're not seeing the same question again if they were to have that reassessment moment. But it really is, you see this quote about not being able to know the skill, but to actually master it, right? At the end of all this, like students will be mastering the skill. You heard about those learning journey outlines. This was another big piece of this, right? So taking those competencies, taking what they should be able to know and actually looking at what does that look like? What is the engagement? What is the learning for a student? And so, thinking about addressing those essential employability and basic reading, writing, and math skills, like how that might be kind of different across the colleges and thinking about that. But also really a lesson learned about making those opportunities for students to talk with, learn from each other, and really, again, having that faculty student engagement. We heard a lot too about the value of instructional designers and working directly with them within the college spaces as you're going through this process. But you'll see we have some example learning journey outlines there. And, some folks flagging this as the biggest challenge, right? Really thinking through what would be on here, how do they support the learning and mastery for students as they progress through the program. Also really thinking here too about those instructional coach, so student supports, right? Advisors, are a big player in this. And so really needing them to also be expert in CBE, maybe even having lower caseloads to manage more of those adds and drops and kind of trajectories, transitions of students. If there can be a dedicated advisor, right? We really talked about the role of all the different players in the game, right? And the advising, the need that students have to really work one-on-one with someone. And so we developed some personas, learning journey maps about what the experience would look like for a student as they're going throughout the program. Did talk to you about some hurdles to implementation, right? I think a lot of you, as you see these on the screen here, can be like, yes, 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 yes. But just getting started, thinking about your faculty and staff. We talked a lot about workload and pay structures and how they would navigate that. But even some of your employer buy-in, right? They might have some hesitation, but really at the end of this, like, your employers will know that your students have mastered these skills, right? They didn't get a C in the class, or maybe they knew some and didn't know all of it. They really are going to master all of those pieces. We had an example of an airplane pilot, right? That they can't know some of the things about flying the plane. They really should be able to master all the components of flying a plane, right? I want to have someone fly my plane who knows everything about flying a plane, not just some of the things about flying a plane. And, flagging the question too with HLC in the chat, there's cautious pieces there, right? As colleges are thinking about accreditation and the new process of that and what that'll look like. So we have some resources for legal and regulatory considerations, and kind of thinking to, again, some notes on HLC and applying for CPE. You heard some of these overarching lessons from Mikey and from Chris. But again, like I mentioned before, I really wanted to call out the quote here on the left, that students are not mediocre at skills, but they master each skill, right? As they go out into the world, employers know exactly what they're able to do. And very much a one size does not fit all. Each institution really collaborated throughout the year, but it does ultimately look a little bit different, right? Depending on which institution that they're in for these programs. I feel like I've said a lot of these things in here. I know we have a case study to talk through too. And if there's additional questions, I haven't checked the chat in a bit, but I think one thing I would highlight here overarching is, as mentioned before with the advisors, you really do need to have everyone involved, but you should be really mindful about the different conversations you're having and what the focus of it is, so that if you have, a different departments joining a conversation, they know what their role is, what they can add value to, what they can learn. There are some conversations that really are just focused on faculty, right, who should be involved from the beginning. But there's other things where you need to be bringing in some administrators, your financial aid, your Canvas people, right? And really thinking about all those pieces, but be intentional and help people know what their role is within those conversations. And I'm going to move here then over to Ginger to share some student insights.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. And as Whitney said, just a reminder that we will share the recording and the deck, so no need to take notes furiously or anything. We will send all that out along with the resources as soon as we're able to share those. So we were able to talk to some CBE students at Lewis and Clark, and if you could go to the next slide, heard some really interesting and hopeful things from them. One of the big takeaways of what they saw as the benefit was the scheduling flexibility and the freedom to work at their own pace. Almost nearly all of the students that we spoke with were actually working either full-time or part-time while they were also taking courses. There were a couple of brand new, just high school graduates, but without fail, everybody really was taking advantage of the scheduling flexibility. You can see a quote there at the top: CBE's done nothing but benefit me because I'm working 40-hour weeks and I can just show up when I need to. We also spoke with another student who had an unpredictable work schedule. So he was sometimes off in other states and then sometimes home for a while. And he was able to use the flexibility of the program to get a lot of work done when he was home, and then also still be able to keep his full-time job. Maybe go to the next one. Another really key takeaway from the students was that it was crucial to have someone for students to connect with who really understands not only the program, the logistics of the program, but also financial aid. In the Lewis and Clark case, their program coordinator was key and helped all of them navigate financial aid and counseling. But no matter what, there was, even from his aspect, that it felt like really, especially financial aid, but all of the services, since students aren't on a regular cadence in the same way that a regularly scheduled student is, they need to have someone to help them figure out how to access all of those college services and supports. And then kind of the final of the three big takeaways from the students was that students really had to be motivated themselves and responsible, and that it just doesn't work unless you have the right students in the program. So we have a quote there: knowing me at 18 years old, I would have looked at it differently than 25. I wouldn't have shown up, but now I can get as much out of it as I possibly can, which is a different attitude, right, when you're 25 than when you're 18. So I'm just watching the time and wanted to share that document we will also be sure to include in the share out, and that's actually posted on the EdSystems website. So if we're not able to share the whole lessons learned document right away, I will share the deck, and probably on Monday we'll share the deck and the recording, and we'll be sure to include that student lessons learned document as well. So we did do a case study and talked a little bit more deeply with the Lewis and Clark folks. Wanted to share some of what they shared in their process, because they do have an approved program. One of the things that's helped them be successful is very direct and proactive student recruitment. So visiting feeder high schools, talking with high school counselors, giving tours. They include banners with a welding logo and a QR code on their website. They recruit businesses to talk to students, and they connect with employment agencies. So reaching out not just at the high school level, but also for potential students who are already working and with their local businesses. You go to the next one. Another big takeaway again was student selection, and really narrowing in on students who are a good fit, because the worst thing you'd want to do, especially with a new program, is get some students who don't have the skill sets already to self-monitor and self-regulate to make sure that they can get things done on their own, and then have students not be successful. And then for support and retention, in this particular case at Lewis and Clark for welding, students used time cards to track the time in the shop. The program coordinator is very present and keeping track of who's around and who's not. One of their goals is to have a particular financial aid representative dedicated to working with CBE students, because it is different. And checking in with advisors and having maybe a regularly scheduled office hours for advisors in the welding building, which is where students come anyway, rather than having to go somewhere else. And then also their general ed instructors are going to be available in the welding building. So I'm just looking at the couple of questions. 2 separate welding programs. Let's see. So these are 2 separate welding programs at the ICCB HLC level. John, I'm not sure I understand the question. Maybe somebody else does. Do you mean the difference between just taking a class or getting a certificate versus traditional welding and self-paced? Yeah. So at Lewis and Clark, they have both traditional welding and self-paced classes, and they both are able to use the lab at the same time. They figured out how to open it up to the CBE students while traditional students are in there. So advice for other programs is to get buy-in from everyone, not just faculty. Put a process in place to assess students. Scheduling and faculty reimbursement is something that takes some serious thinking through and negotiation to figure all of that out. And get the materials ready so that when students are ready for them, they're ready for this. The materials are ready for students. We are coming up on time, so I'm going to turn it over to Whitney for a quick sense for where things are going from here, and we will for sure follow up.
Thank you, Heather and Ginger. Yes, I really am excited for the release of the final report so that you guys can take a deeper dive into the lessons learned and be thinking about how it could support the work that you're doing if you're interested in pursuing a CBE program at your institution. So a couple of things. So we are continuing through our deep deep dive series. We have a number of things that are coming out, right? The lessons learned report, the student insights package. We have, we're working to do a repository of not only the welding and industrial maintenance competencies, but the learning journeys and assessments, etc. So these are kind of resources to help you think through. We have not discussed whether we're going to do another round of a design community. However, we have been moving forward, and it's been stalled a little bit, but as a part of our PATH program, the pipeline for the advancement of the healthcare workforce, we have a CBE learning cohort that's going to be going through CBIN's Competent U modules. And then as you think about supporting this work locally, right, your Perkins grant would be a great resource. Your PATH grant, if it's related to those eligible programs, pretty much anything ICCB funded, the IBT grant, right? That moving toward competency-based education is going to be an allowable use of funds. And so we're definitely looking to integrate the support of CBE through the rest of our grant and related initiatives. And I think we have a slide on resources. I know a few people are asking for that. So I also want to point you to one more thing here. The last link is ICCB CBE Google Drive. We have a number of recorded webinars and slides from previous design community meetings. And so there's a lot in here, and I probably need to get in there and do some organization and some adding, but there are some recordings. If you're wanting to start from CBE 101, we do have a number of recordings in there, hearing from other institutions in other states. We have a webinar series on the landscape of CBE across the nation. So I do encourage you to move around in that space. Otherwise, please let me know if you have questions, and we're definitely looking forward to continuing this journey. Thank you.